How's it going? And welcome to episode 221 of On the Wire, proud member of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. I am Adam Howe, joined as always by Kevin Hasting. Thank you all for listening and watching. We've got a great show lined up for you, as always, on a very special holiday edition as we're recording in the middle of the day before the fireworks go off on July 4th. Any excuse to blow stuff up, right, Kevin?
Oh, exactly. 100%. And the fireworks have started in Chicago. The Cubs, 6 home runs off Miles Mikolas. At 7 outs recorded, 6 home runs. They had 6 home runs with 1 out in the 3rd inning. So the fireworks, Sarah Sanchez and other Cubs fans, congratulations. The Cubs did start fireworks early today.
See, now there's a promotion. I talked about it last month that, Father's Day doesn't have like the pink bat promotion that Mother's Day does. 4th of July, here's a promotion idea. It's like, how in the home run derby, there's the money ball, there's the gold ball at the end. There should be a random ball that's full. That's like, if it hits a certain altitude, it just blows up in the air. It can't hurt anybody as long as it doesn't stay below the altitude line. But if the fireworks go off on 4th of July, then it's automatic home run. That'd be a blast. Literally. Cool. Yeah, I mean, Major League Baseball always needs something to, help their promotional. I was in DC for a conference over the weekend or throughout the course of the week. So I had the pleasure of hitting up Nationals Park on Wednesday on the nightcap of their split doubleheader after the rainout on Tuesday. And man, I mean, it's a nice park, by the way, nice park. Now it is also the 3rd park I've been to that has hosted that franchise. So I've been to Olympic Stadium while the Expos were there. I've been to RFK during a Nationals game, and now Nationals Park. So I was happy to get that off my checklist. But the promotions that they do at that stadium, and I'm sure this is more and more common across smaller markets or just teams that are just looking to fill seats. Like there's a promotion almost every half inning, whether it's talking to fans in the stands, doing some kind of contest. Of course they have the president's race. I'm sure they do that every game. Honestly, if they don't do it every game, the one game you go to that they don't do it, I'd be very disappointed. Right. But there's a lot to it. And this is coming, growing up as a Red Sox fan going to Fenway, there's nothing. Like they might be doing something more often. I haven't been to Fenway in a hot minute, but it's kind of amazing to kind of see all this stuff happening in between innings, trying to interact with fans and get people pumped up, and rather than just be about the product on the field specifically. But that was fun. I'm glad to be able, my first game of the year.
That's cool. You got to do that. I'm not surprised to having young kids and a family, but at first a little surprised you didn't try to stick around for the early game on Friday.
Well, yeah, my flight was already on Thursday night. Yeah. So I was going to go to the Tuesday night game, but that one got rained out. I couldn't go to the day game because I was there to actually work, and then so I was able to sneak out to the Wednesday night game. So that was, I went by myself. And it was actually awesome.
Your Red Sox went.
I know.
In Washington this morning.
On that. Well, I don't know, the way the Red Sox are playing offensively, I don't think I'm missing much as it stands, but that's all right. I will shout out to Jacob Young, though. He made an amazing rob of Riley Green over the wall. And it was just, he was so nonchalant about it. Like he climbed the wall. He kind of reached back behind the wall and caught the ball and then brought it back and just threw it in. He's like, all right, let's go ahead. Next pitch. Let's go.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've noticed, Adam, but Jacob Young all of a sudden playing every day again. So my excitement I had for him in the offseason that had dwindled greatly. In fact, he was dropped in most places in many leagues by a lot of people. He all of a sudden 4 stolen bases in the last week and a half playing every day. So yeah, he's definitely on my list later.
There you go. All right. Well, no spoilers. That's called the tease, everybody. Let's get into the news that has nothing to do with Jacob Young. We'll get to him later. Let's start in Philadelphia, though. Another game that was rained out throughout the course of the week because with all the rain that happened throughout. Just a update on their pitching situation. Aaron Nola, he threw a bullpen on Sunday. He's going to continue his rehab in Clearwater, in their high A facility, and he'll need a couple more bullpens before he starts any live BP. So he's still a ways away from possibly returning from his injury. Meanwhile, the Phillies are expected to get Taijuan Walker back in their rotation. He is set to start on Tuesday, or expected to start this coming Tuesday. They've already sent down Mick Abel. He was sent down to AAA, and they're expected to fill in that gap with a bullpen game or two throughout the course of the next week. So any overall or overarching observations or expectations on the Phillies starting rotation? And are you expecting Mick Abel to be getting called back up anytime soon? Or is this just like kind of an innings control type of move?
Yeah, all of that. I think yes is the answer to everything you just said. I think we will see him again soon. We don't know exactly when. Probably at some point he'll be called up and placed in the rotation to start a game without us having known in time to set our lineups for that week. That's probably going to happen. My interest here is who's going to follow Taijuan Walker on Tuesday in San Francisco. That's a pretty nice matchup, and I don't think Taijuan Walker will go 5. I'm thinking in a deep league, a stab on somebody like Joe Ross or somebody that I think could come in the 4th or 5th inning and maybe steal a win here.
Yeah, that's an excellent call. Like somebody like Walker, who doesn't always go deep into games anyway, coming back and is still ill type of return. Won't be surprised if what'll happen is he'll go 4.2. He'll get as close as you possibly can, and we'll see somebody get that 1-out win. Just to kind of stick it to anybody who was expecting otherwise. Another loss here. We got a string of losses. We'll start with the Cubs. Aforementioned Cubs. They might be, setting off fireworks with the bat, but they're going to be without Jameson Taillon for a while as he hits the IL with a right calf strain. Jordan Wicks takes his place on the roster, but is there any expectation that Jordan Wicks will, be anything more than a bulk reliever or at most like a follower? What any other observations of the Cubs rotation?
Well, Roster Resource has Wicks starting, in fact, starting on Saturday versus St. Louis, and then would be at the New York Yankees next weekend. So, yeah, I'm not interested, and I don't think there's anybody else, that I'd be interested in these spots. So I'm not going to spend too much time worrying about it.
Yeah, Jordan Wicks also not somebody I'm expecting to, qualify for the win. But this is tough. No. Like it's tougher to guess in these situations. Like with the whole Shohei Ohtani being the opener, the Dodgers have been a lot more forthright with who's going to be following him. And obviously, it's been Ben Kasparius most of the time, and you don't get that out of most of these other situations. So there's obviously it's a lot harder to stream the situation during the week, especially if you're in a daily moves league. In a weekly moves, you can still make that guess if you're in a situation like the Taijuan Walker, where you're like, I can just guess, I can grab somebody from the bullpen I think will be the one that comes in first. And worst case scenario, they aren't, but at least I'm going to get a full week's worth of work out of them. The Jordan Wicks situation is happening this weekend. I mean, you just won't know until it actually happens. Another loss here, New York Yankees. They lose Clark Schmidt to the dreaded right forearm tightness. As you mentioned to me earlier, they haven't even gotten the results back yet, so they already know he's already on the IL. But we're not expecting anything in a positive note at this point. Any changes in the Yankees rotation worth mentioning?
Well, So the big thing, especially for Yankees fans, right, is Luis Heel is working his way back. He's scheduled to throw 35 pitches this coming week, and then a rehab assignment. So I'm sure we're going to need multiple rehab appearances, but we could be looking at what 4 weeks now. So they got to get by until then. Roster resource already. This just happened on Thursday, so there's still some up in the air. They have Alan Winans getting another opportunity next weekend. But by that time, this could be a bullpen game. Yes, Winans could get the start. It could be an opener type situation. He could actually be the follower. With it being next weekend um, after after this weekend's games, we know we're going to see Stroman, Rodon, Max Fried, Will Warren on Tuesday, and then because they have an off day Monday, they come right back to Stroman. So it's next weekend before the Yankees have to figure this out. That makes this very difficult for us making our FAAB bids this Sunday evening because I don't think the Yankees even know what they're going to do yet.
That's always the best, right? Especially for us, when the team, you feel like the team
Exactly.
doesn't even understand what they're doing.
Right.
All right. Well, let's get out of a rotation and head into a lineup, expected lineup change. I think probably relatively soon. As Chris Welsh mentioned, that's where I learned about this. Corbin Carroll's already starting batting leadoff and playing the field for Arizona's Arizona Complex League team just the other day. And I mean, you got to expect that Carroll's going to be back with the D-backs like sooner rather than later if they've already got him playing actively, not only batting but playing the field as well and getting as many at bats as possible as the leadoff spot. Does his return mean that Jake McCarthy is simply not playing every single day? Who I'm glad we mentioned him last week because he's had a nice little 8-game hit streak going so far. He did not start yesterday or not play yesterday at all. But besides that, he's been playing every single day. He's got at least one hit in all of those games, a couple of home runs, a stolen base. And so are we just going to be missing out on Jake McCarthy, or is there any other has Jake McCarthy done enough to warrant staying in the lineup somehow?
Well, they really like Alek Thomas's defense in center field. Jake McCarthy has played center field for him in the past and could again. And that's really how I would see him staying in this lineup. He could still play right field for a while. Yes, as you mentioned, Corbin Carroll is playing right field in the complex, but I would still think we see some DH appearances, right?
Sure.
We've seen Pavin Smith at first base recently. Ketel Marte gets a DH appearance once in a while, but he's been at second base most days. So that may be what we see for a little while, especially if Jake McCarthy is still hitting. So I wouldn't automatically give up on him, even if we hear Corbin Carroll is going to be back this coming week. I wouldn't drop Jake McCarthy this week. Like you said, he's been performing well.
Yeah. And anybody who is, holding on to Carroll, obviously you should have been. It'll be one of those situations where like he'll just be activated on Monday without any warning. And so keep an eye on that as you're setting your lineups in those weekly leagues. Yeah, I know this happened to me last week with Shea Langoliers. Did not know or expect him to come off the IL on the Monday. Did not get him into the lineup for the first half of the week. And of course, my buddy's got
They have a 4-game first half this week as well. That's what's going to make it tough if we haven't heard anything when we're setting lineups on Monday.
Be the worst. All right. Another Casey or another Schmidt out here, just spelled a little bit differently. Casey Schmidt in for the Giants. He hits the IL earlier in the week with pain in his hand or wrist after being hit there earlier in the week. Tyler Fitzgerald was back with the Giants, and then Matt Chapman he said that he is expected to start a rehab assignment in Reno this weekend. So we got to expect that he'll be back with the team in shorter order sometime next week. I'm going on a limb and saying. So with the expectation of Chapman coming back, obviously filling back in at third base, what do you think we could expect for playing time changes with the Giants lineup?
Well, they've moved Brett Wisely over there the past couple of days because Christian Koss also went on the IL and he had been manning third base. So yeah, I think they need Matt Chapman back, and it's not going to affect anybody that we've been counting on for our fantasy teams. These guys that have been filling in have been mostly part-time players being shuffled around, but it will be great to get Matt Chapman back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially if he could just hit the ground running the way he had been for most of the season.
It started off early, really, really hot, kind of cooled off, but was just smoking the baseball again right before the injury. So yes, absolutely. Hopefully he picks up where he left off.
Another loss here from a lineup back in Atlanta. As we talked about last week, Jurgen Profar expected and did return to the Atlanta lineup. Collateral damage was Alex Verdugo, who got DFA'd in order to make room for him. Over on the rotation side, kind of the bigger news here, the Braves are going to be without Spencer Schwellenbach. He hits the IL with a fractured elbow. Awesome. And with as much sarcasm as I can possibly put on that word. But besides that, I mean, Verdugo being DFA'd, was that a surprise to you? And do you think he gets picked up anywhere else?
I was a little surprised just because, you know, of the depth aspect, but I do think someone will pick him up. I'm not sure exactly until we know who that is. We won't know how he's going to be used, of course. And I really don't have a guess, but I would guess as a part-time player. So not a lot there. I think you mentioned the rotation side where we're going to see the 20-year-old Fuentes get another and just turned 20 years old
Right.
last month. And we're going to see him get another opportunity, but in West Sacramento. So I'm not really interested there. Bryce Elder's been back in the rotation again. It's interesting to me. I'm kind of bouncing around here, but back to the hitting side, which you brought up first. We had been told by Atlanta that Profar was going to slot right back into the 2-hole. Not horrible for him. He's been in the 4 or 5 spot all 3 games since his return, but that's just because Matt Olson's really heated up. They didn't want to move him out of that 2 spot, I don't think. So they slotted Profar in the middle of the order. A few more RBIs, few less runs probably, but yeah, I think that's what we're going to see with Atlanta going forward.
Yeah. I mean, Profar had made a name for himself as, you know, a leadoff hitter in San Diego, spent some time, a little bit of time there as well. Obviously not going to lead off for Atlanta, but seeing him in the 2 spot was pretty commonplace before the suspension. So, but to put him in the 4 spot, even the 5 spot, not the end of the world for sure. All right, a couple more things here. Kind of lightning rounding it here. Brandon Woodruff is expected to make his season debut on Sunday. And, you know, Milwaukee's rotation has, you know, been missing him for sure. But is there anybody that's going to displace? And what do you expect out of Woodruff? He's finally going to actually make it, right? Knock on wood, something random doesn't come along and stop that from happening. How long do you expect Woodruff to remain in the rotation? I don't expect him to get pulled and put in the bullpen. I don't want to make sure anybody doesn't think that's what I'm saying, until he actually has to be pulled out for innings concerns or injury concerns or anything like that.
Well, so he actually has logged quite a few innings in the minors this season with all of these setbacks
Sure.
on of the different his different rehab setbacks. He's up to 42 innings this season, and he hadn't pitched since 2023. So maybe double that. I think there are innings concerns here. You're very very That's correct in bringing that up, I think. He's got a pretty nice landing spot. If we see him Sunday versus Miami, now there's been a couple of times this season when we thought we were going to see this and haven't, but I think we're pretty confident we're going to see him Sunday versus Miami, and then he gets Washington next weekend. So I'm willing to get him in my lineup next week because he has been building up for quite some time with a couple of shorter layoffs. It hasn't been that he's been injured this entire season, even though we haven't seen him at the major league level yet. So I feel like he's especially getting that Miami start Sunday, that he will be capable of going 5 innings plus next weekend versus Washington. Going forward, yeah, that's it. It's going to be worth watching. I don't know if it will be not allowing him to go as deep in games. If we skip a start here or there, Milwaukee's got postseason plans and they will want Brandon Woodruff. So, and I think this is going to be an issue for us going forward. We're going to have to try to get an idea of what Milwaukee is planning to do.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel for anybody who kind of drafted Woodruff and has been stashing him.
I have that couple of teams.
Yeah.
And had him all year.
It not only hurts that of all the setbacks, but your point about he's already thrown 40 plus innings. You have to assume he probably is limited to somewhere around 100, innings on the season.
Yeah.
And so the fact that he already threw away half of those innings in rehab assignments and in the minors is unfortunate. Yeah, you're just not going to get.
He is 32-year-old veteran. He might get more innings than we're thinking right now, but also he's still only 32. So
this is also
they're in a tough spot.
This is a contract year for him as well, as was last year. So
Milwaukee might run him out. Right? We've seen that before with teams.
I'm like, yeah, I'll throw as many innings as you want if you sign me at least till next year.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got a couple more pieces of news and we'll get to those, but we're going to take a quick break. All right, real quick, back in Dodgerland here, the Dodgers do call up Esteury Ruiz to fill a gap of some sort for the Dodgers. The other Dodgers piece of news here that actually, I don't know why I forgot. I didn't even type this in here, but I did, but I skipped it. Max Muncy. These are unrelated, by the way. Ruiz was called up prior to this. Max Muncy, though, did say he expects to be out at least the next 6 weeks with a left knee bone bruise. Yes, I know bone bruises can linger and they can take a while to heal up, but I am assuming that there's a little bit more to it than that. If he's the one actually saying he'll be out for at least the next 6 weeks. Is there any avenue for Esteury Ruiz to actually get valuable playing? I'm not even saying regular playing time, but enough playing time for us to actually take notice?
It's so hard to know, right? He just got called up. He was not in the lineup on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
We see that quite often, first game when players get called up. It is getting to the time of year where I am more likely to stream for stolen bases. And Esteury Ruiz, obviously, he already has 39 stolen bases this season at AAA, right? We know that's his game. We know that even if he's not starting games, the Dodgers will use him as a pinch runner late. So that's what we're looking at least that. So I think he's definitely intriguing. And I think in spots where I have room, where I have a drop and don't necessarily have a specific need, maybe I try to grab him this week, a little less expensive than it'll be if we do see he's getting consistent playing time.
Sure.
Because we know the stolen bases will be there. We have no idea how many plate appearances and other counting stats therefore he's going to get. But because of that, I think he'll be relatively inexpensive this week. And if I have room, I might grab him as a short-term stash.
Yeah, obviously, if you need the stolen bases, he's going to be an option, but that just don't expect to get anything else. Like he was, the buzz when he first came up because you do expect 60 something stolen bases out of him on a regular, annual basis if he's getting enough playing time. But different than Chandler Simpson, where at least Chandler Simpson is giving you a very high batting average in theory. And if he's batting closer to the top of the lineup, he's also scoring a lot of runs just due to his speed and the opportunity. Esteury Ruiz, not expected to give you those two other categories, could actually actively hurt you in the batting average category. And to correct myself from earlier, they were the one-to-one. That was the one-to-one call-up. Muncy going to the IL, Ruiz being the call-up to replace him on the roster. But obviously not a one-to-one for position eligibility. What any expectations on who's going to get the bulk of playing time at third base with Muncy being out?
They're filling in with Miguel Rojas so far. That's really all I know. I think this could be a benefit to Hyesung Kim that some have been clamoring for a little more playing time for him, depending on how things get shuffled. So that would be something worth keeping an eye on. Tommy Edman was back to the infield on Thursday, and that opens up a spot. But all of these guys were playing, Pages, Teoscar, and Michael Conforto, obviously in the outfield as well. So maybe we see that more regularly. We had seen Edmund out in center field for a game, probably just giving Pages a break there. But yeah, so those guys are going to shuffle around a little bit. Right now it's Rojas. I really don't think they will, bring Outman back or anything like that. I think they're going to try to shuffle guys around, and we may see the way things get moved around, we may see some playing time for Ruiz, like those of us looking for stolen bases would be hoping for.
Yeah, the only player that I can tell that has played third base for the Dodgers this year, besides Max Muncy and Miguel Rojas when Muncy was sitting, has been Enrique Hernandez, filling in about 2 or 3 times back in May. So it's not as though, it very well could just be Miguel Rojas or our everyday third baseman for the next 6 weeks. And we'll just go from there.
It could be a platoon as well. They could let Enrique play versus lefties.
So, if anybody is a fan out there of Miguel Rojas, at least Miguel Rojas seems to be the one in line for the most additional playing time moving forward. Well, we'll see how they do. They handle the rest of the weekend. Baltimore, they decided to option Dylan Carlson, who, as they're expected to bring back Tyler O'Neill from his one of many IL stints. How long does Tyler O'Neill last until he gets onto another one?
Yeah, that's always the question. That's obviously it makes it really tough with Tyler O'Neill. I think what I am more intrigued about with Baltimore is since coming off of the IL, and he's fairly heavily rostered, at least in 15s, but widely available in 12s, as I don't think many people, unless they already roster him, realize how well Ramon Laureano has been playing over these past 3 weeks since he's been playing every day coming off the IL. That was the biggest thing I noticed when looking at the Baltimore lineup. Of course, we know what Tyler O'Neill can do when he's healthy. We don't always see him what we would believe to be 100% healthy, even when he is not on the IL and back. That would be my concern. But if he hits the ground running, yeah, we want him in our lineups as long as he's available.
Yeah, and to correct myself, they're not expected to. He did return on Friday, started as the DH, batting 8th for Baltimore. And so he is officially back. That another one-to-one transaction for the Orioles here, with Carlson being optioned down. Yeah, and the rest of that outfield has always kind of been something of a concern. Who's getting the playing time? How are they handling that up? But ultimately, it recently, except for the injuries, seems to have been a little bit more consistent over the course of the last 2 or 3 months. I'm not saying it's been all positive production, but it has been a little bit more consistent with who's going out there on a regular basis. So, this very easily could just end up being, a very obvious 1-to-1 here. Dylan Carlson was playing somewhat every day, besides that short stint as he was sent down for a couple days, excuse me, over the last weekend. But there's a lot of playing time over the course of the last week and a half or 2 weeks that Carlson is leaving on the table. So could just very well be an easy 1-to-1 switcheroo with Tyler O'Neill. All right, I'm gonna stay in the offense here. I'm gonna save the pitching one for last. That's on our outline here. Texas Rangers, they brought back Jake Berger from the IL, and they optioned third baseman Josh Young back to the minors. Can Berger just kind of slot right in and kind of do what he was doing prior to his IL stint, or do we see more of a platoon situation for him?
No, I expect that we see Jake Berger every day, and I expect we see the second half Jake Berger that we've seen the last 2 seasons. We were beginning to see that before this most recent IL stint. So because he had been horrible for much of the first half, if he's available, I would absolutely snatch him up.
Yeah. Josh Smith doing what he does best and just playing wherever they tell him to play, playing third
leading
base,
off, which is amazing.
He's been leading off the last month and a half. Doesn't matter what position he plays, filling in for Seager at shortstop, filling in at third base every once in a while, playing first base regularly while Berger was out as well. Now I'm expecting to see him at third base until, I don't even know until. I just think Josh Smith has been a pleasant surprise with all that position eligibility and leading off for, a somewhat struggling. The thing is that Rangers offense might be struggling.
He outperformed Josh Young. That's why we saw Young go. If you'd have brought this up, weeks ago, what's going to happen when Berger comes back? We would have thought Josh Smith probably somehow is losing at least a little bit of playing time. But this is got to be a huge boost in confidence for him, I would think.
Yeah. Yeah, and then even with the rest of the Rangers lineup not doing well in general, Young being one of them, the top of the lineup has been very good, and so Josh Smith being at the top of the lineup has been able to benefit from the Corey Seagers, the Marcus Semyons, the Adolis Garcias actually hitting the ball, and then Josh Smith being able to score some runs and being on base and what have you. So, top of that lineup is still nothing to be no sticks being shaken. All right, we'll close it out here with a little bit of a disappointing piece of news. Luis L. Ortiz of the Cleveland Guardians, he was suspended right before he was scheduled to start on today, Friday. As we're recording this, he will not be making that. He'll be out at least 3 weeks, as Jeff Passan reports that Major League Baseball is investigating him after allegations or suspicions of basically tampering with some gambling situations. And it's all based on 2 individual pitches to start games where he threw the ball, or start innings even, where he threw the ball quite outside the zone. So, we'll see how that all works out, but he is suspended and he will not be eligible to return for at least another 3 weeks. Easy drop here in all formats, the situation, or are you going to sit back and wait for more?
It's probably a drop for me. The fact that as soon as this news broke, he was pulled from a start that he was set to make that day, yesterday on Thursday, and that it's already at least 3 weeks, leads me to believe that they already have at least a good amount of the information they need.
Sure. Yeah, it was so at first before Passan came out and said, like, specifically they're looking at these 2 pitches. It was so nebulous. It was like it had no, like,
Yeah.
this is weird. Like, what is what is happening right now? And so, yeah, Luis L. Ortiz, you can, in my opinion, yes, you can safely drop him. There's no really need to stash him. He was a cherry bomb type of player anyway. You never really knew what you were going to get, and maybe that was by design. I don't know. We'll see. All right. Well, I'm sure there was lots of other news throughout the course. I mean, I know there was lots of other news throughout the course of the week. Hopefully we hit on all the things that are going to be impacting your FAAB considerations for this weekend on July 6th. But for everything else, of course, you should be listening to the First Pitch podcast with Jay Crumpler and Trevor Huth. They do that show every single day throughout the entire season. So we're, just getting into July. Just know that they're not going away. You can rely on them every single day to do that. So extra shout out to Jake and Trevor for being so consistent with that every single day throughout the course of the season. And of course, Nick Pollack has you covered with starting pitching with the weekday version of the Plus Pitch podcast. If you're not reading the SP Roundup every single day, you get the audio version of it by listening to him or watching him do it live on playback.tv/pitcherlist with the Plus Pitch podcast. All right. Well, that's enough plugs for our other shows at the moment. And in just a second, we are going to get into our actual recommendations. But I think this is as good a time as any to take another break. All right, Kevin. 4th of July weekend. We say it all the time. This is your time to, take advantage of other people not paying attention, right? There's a holiday weekend, 4th of July on the Friday. It's a perfect 3-day weekend situation. The only other better way is if it landed on a Monday. People are out barbecuing, going out to the lake, doing all their things throughout the course of the weekend. If you can get on top of that early, if you're watching us live, as soon as you're done watching us, just go put in bids. Go put in your bids for your players. And that way, even at the worst case, you forget on Sunday night, you've at least got something. You've got the base of some actual bids in there, and you won't be left high and dry. So let's give everybody some names to fill those bids in with, especially if you are looking at the power categories of home runs and RBIs, who might be available and who should you get in your waterfall bids.
Yeah, I really like the matchups for Cincinnati this week, and it will come up here in a bit in the opportunity section, but they have a 7-game week all at home. Cincinnati's offense has been a little underwhelming this season. It was downright bad at the very beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
They have picked it up. They're mid-pack. They're about a league average offense versus right-handed pitching, and they're facing right-handed pitching all week in these 7 home games. And there are a couple of guys available that I like here. Will Benson has the most availability, plays versus most righties. 6 home runs on the year in only 100 and some plate appearances. So getting more consistent playing time recently. Yeah, only 6 home runs on the season, but I think this is a great opportunity for somebody like Will Benson. This is a great week. If you're in a top spot, he's got the availability. The bigger name, less availability, but some availability. Christian and Carson Strand. We saw the Grand Slam a couple of nights ago.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to be picking it up a little bit. He is available in a handful of 15s, but over half of 12s as well. But anybody I can get my hands on in the Cincinnati lineup that's going to play versus righties this week, I'm definitely in on. I was listening to Bubba in the Bloom, as I always do, and bring him up a lot. And Ryan Bloomfield was really pounding this home. The schedule that Cincinnati has this week, and I couldn't agree more. Anybody available in this lineup, I'm interested in this week. And also, we're not talking about speed yet, and I didn't pick a specific player, but anybody that ever attempts to steal a base at all, they do get Miami for 4 of these games.
There you go. Yes. Oh, this is one of those things where we're just gonna pick on Miami until they prove otherwise.
Yeah,
So
so
always
many things
something.
go. So many things look right for Cincinnati this week. Hopefully, it works out.
Take advantage. Yeah. 7 games in Great American Small Park, please. Thank you.
All
Um,
righties,
yeah, just
teams
all
that
those
can't
matches.
defend the stolen base. It should be a good Cincinnati week.
Well, you didn't pick a specific. You don't need to pick a specific player for speed for Cincinnati if you're playing Miami. So let's talk about any other specific players out there. Of course, we already alluded to it earlier, but let's get right
Yeah.
into stolen bases and runs scored, Kevin, and talk about your boy.
The great thing about Jacob Young is that he is going to give you not just decent, but good help in batting average, as well as the stolen bases, even though he's hitting at the bottom of the lineup. That does allow him to score a few runs, but the RBI will not be there. And we know he doesn't have power. So if you're lacking in home runs and RBI, this is not a move you can make. But if you're okay in those categories, this is a great move you can make now that he's back to playing every day. Jacob Young for Washington.
There you go. I mean, because we have to pick on them. Cincinnati's not the only team that gets to face off against Miami. Baltimore,
Right.
Miami then goes into Baltimore before the break. And so anybody out there on Baltimore that might be available, let's take advantage of that situation as well. Speaking of opportunities ahead of themselves, as you mentioned, Cincinnati does have the 7 games. Other teams with a 7-game work week heading into the All-Star break include Boston, Tampa Bay, the White Sox, Cleveland, the Angels, Texas, Miami, aforementioned Cincinnati Reds, Arizona, and San Diego. Nobody has the 5-game work week. I mean, everybody's got 3 or 4 games off at the end of the week anyway, so no reason to give them extra time off beforehand. Colorado, you said Cincinnati's going to be at home for all 7. Colorado will be away from Denver for all of their games as they head in. They give Rocky Road to the Boston Red Sox and serve it up in Cincinnati for the weekend series. So going from one stadium to the other. Tampa Bay, the minor league stadiums, one of them will be empty. The other one will host the entire week, with Tampa Bay being on the road at Detroit and at Boston. But the Athletics will be hosting Atlanta and Toronto in West Sacramento. So you could take advantage of that from a hitter's perspective. It's been so funny to kind of hear comments from different pitchers about the mound, about the environment being so negative. But then you'll see random pitchers like, Jacob Lopez come up and just like have a lot of success minus, that one start. And it's just like, why are some pitchers loving and some pitchers obviously hating it? So very unpredictable. And as we keep talking about, as hot as it's been in the entire country over the last 2 weeks, everything east of the Mississippi has been hot and humid and gross, with a couple of thunderstorms scattered throughout. West Sacramento in June and July is a nightmare. And so all the time, and it's very dry and very hot. It's just not a pleasant place to be, never mind play baseball in open stadium. So yeah, we'll see how that kind of works out, especially on the pitching side throughout the rest of the summer. With all that in mind though, Kevin, and anything else you want to consider, who has a good opportunity ahead of themselves that we might be able to take advantage of leading up to the All-Star break?
Yeah, because of it taken a little longer, I think, than some of us had hoped this season. Hae-Sung Kim is widely available. He is back. He is in the lineup on Friday at shortstop, and he's available in almost 80% of 15s and over 90% of 12s. Tampa, yes, they're on the road, but a 7-game week. And it appears that Hae-Sung Kim is going to be right back in the lineup on an everyday basis. Moderate power, a little bit of speed at times. With it being an arm injury, I'm not too concerned about him not running.
Sure.
Of course, this is a new team, so we'll see how they deploy him and turn him loose on the base paths. But I'm all about Hae-Sung Kim being back, right back in the lineup on his first day back. And with Tampa having a 7-game week, Sure, he might get a day or two off since he just came off the IL. That 7-game week helps with that. I would fully expect to get at least 3 games the first half of the week and at least 2 over the weekend out of Ha-Seong Kim.
Man, there's a lot of fast players on Tampa Bay right now. And if you get them all back to back, you get them all on base at the same time, it can be a fun time to watch.
That brings up a good point because somehow Caballero and Taylor Walls have gotten their playing time. With Ha-Seong Kim here now, I know they love his defense, but are we finally going to see Taylor Walls on the bench? Or is Caballero going to lose a lot of time as well? Which I prefer. I have teams where I roster both Walls and Caballero on the same roster and try to decide every time I'm setting my lineup which one to put
get more
in
of it
for that scoring period. And that's going to get a lot worse, and maybe to the point where one of these guys is a drop at least, right?
Yeah, I mean, with the return of Ha-Seong Kim, they sent down Curtis Mead, and he's not exactly taking up the positions from either Kim, Walls, or Caballero.
Right.
Now, what Caballero has for him is he's got the position flexibility. He's been filling in not only at shortstop, but in center field, in right field. At times, pretty much. I mean, in Yahoo, he's got eligibility at everything but first base, and so he, in theory, could be able to kind of fill in those outfield slots instead of the shortstop. Taylor Walls doesn't really have that flexibility because, like you said, all of his value is at that defensive position at shortstop. Now, does that mean he can't kind of move around or fill in, either at second base or, somewhere else in the infield? Is unsure, but, we'll see how they work it out. But somebody's losing out. And my guess is that it's going to be both of them, and where we see Kim playing pretty regularly, and the other two are just getting chipped away, and it's not one or the other. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I have Caballero plenty of places, so I'm not too happy about this, but maybe it makes me, spend up a little bit more on Kim as that backup. But in weekly leagues, to your point, it's still, you have Kim and Caballero. It's like, you have to pick and choose, pick your poison as far as like who you think is going to get the most playing time in that given week, because they're giving you similar production. Kim probably a little bit more power, obviously, and just more consistency. You'd assume. Caballero probably a little bit more stolen bases, but Caballero's not being deployed either as like a pinch runner with the intent of stealing the base. At least he hasn't recently. So I, maybe that's just not what they're, planning on utilizing him throughout his time. So if he doesn't start, I haven't seen him be pinched run with a whole lot. So we'll have to kind of see how that plays out.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. And Caballero, now that I'm looking at this more closely, over the past week and a half, already sliding into more of a short slide platoon. He's only started versus one of the last 7 righties Tampa has faced. This is very concerning the more I look at it.
Yeah. So keep an eye on that situation. I've been holding on to him in my daily league because somebody like that has more flexibility or at least has more
with his eligibility in a daily league. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. But
you can find a spot for him when he's in the lineup.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, that's a good shout out there. I feel like a lot of people have been watching Kim, but they haven't been able to kind of pull that trigger, especially in NFBC where he hadn't been available. He hadn't made his debut yet throughout the course of the season, but he has still been stashed in quite a few places, relatively speaking. 21% rostered, as you mentioned, in the main event, 7% rostered in online championships. Still might have been available with people drafting him, dropping him, but still widely available for this FAAB period, regardless. All right, well, we'll get into some pitching categories as we tend to do, but we're going to take another quick break. All right, Kevin, this has become one of my favorite sections. I'm gonna hit a little mute button and let you do your thing, but we're looking for wins and we're looking for strikeouts. Who you got out there that you can, again, add to your waterfall bids?
Yep, a couple of guys facing Miami this week. That's I think I used the word pesky last week with Miami. They've been hitting a little better. I'm still not running away from them. Dean Kramer has some availability in 15s. He's 88% rostered in the NFBC main event, only 12% in 12s, so definitely available in most of those. And Trevor Rogers, he is universally rostered in the 15s, but available in over half of 12s. I think he's viable in a 12. I liked Eric Lauer last week. I like him again this week, and he's still got some availability. Over 20% of main events he's available, and nearly 90% of 12s, and he is at the White Sox. Another team like Miami that has, at least in spots, performed a little better recently. And yes, at Chicago in the summertime, that can be a good hitter's ballpark, but I'm still not running away from the White Sox. In fact, I like White Sox pitching this week as well. A couple of guys with a couple of nice matchups. Sean Burke and Aaron Savale both get Toronto and Cleveland. Both Toronto and Cleveland been mid-pack or slightly worse over the past 3 weeks. Burke available in almost half of main events. 97% of 12s he's available. And yeah, there's some 12s where I think I'd throw him out there for this two-step this week. Same with Aaron Savale. Yes, I know, up and down. It can go bad, but he's available in almost 80% of main events and 96% of 12-team online championships out there for that two-step, both at home versus Toronto versus Cleveland for both these guys. Again, Adrian Hauser gets the Toronto start. He's 81% rostered in main events, only 6% in 12s. And again, for this matchup, I think I could throw him out there in a 12. So all those White Sox pitchers sounds kind of crazy. Houston, the two guys we've been talking about recently, still have some availability. Brandon Walter, they get that Cleveland. He gets that Cleveland start from the two-step of the White Sox pitchers we were talking about earlier. Nearly universally rostered in main events and 62% rostered in 12s. But I like this matchup versus Cleveland for Brandon Walter. And then his teammate, Colton Gordon, just as highly rostered in 15s, but much more availability in 12s. He's only 23% rostered in online championships, and he gets the Texas Rangers. As you mentioned earlier, Adam, Texas, much better recently, especially the top half of the lineup. We're seeing Odalis kind of turn it on here recently. They're getting Jake Berger back, but they haven't been very good as a lineup for most of this season. So Colton Gordon and a nice opportunity there later in the week. Couple of Pittsburgh pitchers because of the two-step they each get. Andrew Heaney, yes, we've seen him good this season. We've seen him bad this season. Bailey Falter, we've seen actually mostly pretty darn good this season. They both get at Kansas City, at Minnesota. Kansas City, one of, if not the worst team in baseball versus lefties. In spite of having a couple of games recently where they've scored some runs, they've still been horrible versus lefties. And Minnesota's mid-pack or slightly below over the past 3 weeks versus lefties as well. So love the two-step for both Andrew Heaney and Bailey Falter. I brought up Andre Palante last week. He gets another nice matchup, or a couple of them actually this week versus Washington, versus Atlanta. We did talk about earlier, Atlanta heating up a little bit as well, kind of like Texas. Teams we expected to have good lineups haven't, but now showing signs. So that is a little concerning, but Palante has been performing pretty well recently. I'm in on this two-step. And then Ben Kasparius, because of being moved in and out of the rotation, has some availability. And I think if we knew for certain he was in the rotation and we knew for certain that he was going to be in the rotation and get a start at San Francisco this coming week, he'd be universally rostered. But he's available in a handful of 15s, actually about 17% of main events he's available, and nearly half of 12s. He's 51% rostered in the online championship. So Ben Kasparius, I think, will probably be universally rostered after Sunday evening, except in the leagues where everybody forgets to put in their FAAB bids due to the holiday weekend.
Yeah, Kasperius obviously been like the most obvious guy that would come up after Shohei Ohtani, which is in theory lovely, which is exactly
Yes,
what you want. I'd
which
rather
is
him not be in the
great,
rotation if I
even if
know he's just following Ohtani every time.
right, which is so that's kind of the backup plan here, right? Maybe for some reason by next weekend the Dodgers decide they don't want Kasperius in the rotation. He's still going to be valuable.
Yeah. I think what they mentioned that he should be pitching today. I just don't know in what capacity. The Yahoo has him starting, but I didn't think he was starting today. But we'll kind of see what kind of role or how many innings he goes today to kind of see where they kind of see him slotting in over the weekend. So, I mean, he's going to pitch, and it seems as though they've got him stretched out
MLB
enough.
now has him listed as the starter tonight as well.
So even if he's not in the rotation, I expect him not to go back to a 1 or 2 inning kind of reliever. And even if we only get the one start out of him or the equivalent of one start out of Kasperius, he obviously has the potential of being extremely valuable, especially in the strikeout department. And if he can follow Shohei or somebody else, great. Put him in, he's Dodgers.
Absolutely.
Going to give him an opportunity for a win there. All right. Well, wins and strikeouts aplenty. A couple of them are a little bit more of a dice throw than others. But we gotta rational it out with some ratio help here. ERA and WHIP. Who's the kind of name you're eyeballing, especially when it comes to how they're being used over the weekend and heading into the All-Star break. You got to assume. I'm assuming there's going to be plenty of bullpen usage across the league that we could see some extra innings out of some of the best relievers out there.
Yeah, especially if they're like the third or fourth guy, right? More that we typically see in the seventh inning, maybe a little sooner. We might see them even earlier, maybe pick up a win for us here and there coming in the fifth or sixth. As always, I'm going to give a shout out to Rick Graham's Holds article that comes out on Pitcher List every Thursday. And as usual, he's got a great name right at the beginning of the article. I think like the third or fourth paragraph here, Adrian Morejon in San Diego, over his past almost 16 innings, he has a 0.38 whip. It doesn't get much better than that for ratios. A 23 plus percent K minus walk rate, over 34% CSW. So yeah, Morzon getting more and more high leverage opportunities. Yes, they have Suarez, they have Adam, they have Estrada, but Morzon is now in the mix in the seventh inning and later for the Padres in some of these high leverage situations. And yes, this is a ratios category, and that's what I'm looking at first here. But I'm typically giving preference to those that I think could also snag me a win or a save. And Morejon, the way he's been being used recently and the way he's performing fits that bill.
Yeah, I mean, and to your point, you say this every time calling out Rick's article. It's like the guys who are getting the holds are being put in they're being trusted in the situations to hold, small leads,
Or a
save
tie
like
game, and then they get the win.
Yes, exactly. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that they're being trusted enough to rack up all these holds means that they're being trusted to keep their ratios down. So we should be trusted on our side to do the same. So good call out there in general. And then, of course, you do need some saves to go along with it. So there are relievers out there that are vulturing saves. They are getting into the mix. And I like the call out here because this is a situation that I feel like a lot of people kind of drag their feet on in touching just because you're like, oh man, it's just like it could be anybody, but then it turns out to not just be anybody. It ends up just being one person. So talk to me about the opportunity you might have to pick up some saves on the wire.
Yeah, I think we briefly mentioned this this situation last week. We definitely talked about it 2 weeks ago, the situation in Philadelphia. 2 weeks ago, I said I would take either Matt Strom or Orion Kirkgreen, whichever one that I could land least expensively, I'd be more than happy with. We have seen Matt Strom getting, it appears, maybe more the guy
Sure.
than Kirkering as we're going forward. There's only been one save for Philadelphia over the past week, and it did go to Matt Strom. I mentioned Bubba and the Bloom earlier. This is another thing that Bubba actually brought up this week. Because he's available in over half of 12-team leagues. He's 98% rostered in 15s. Matt Strom, I'm talking about. He he's only rostered 47% of 12s, and the way Bubba phrased it, and that's why I'm crediting him here. If I can throw this guy out there that's going to give me great ratios, the category we just talked about, and some strikeouts on a per inning basis, and even if he's only going to give me one save a week, I'm in on that all day. That's a 27 save season. Sure, we want the guys getting 35 plus, but I think Matt Strom has enough of this gig that he should be universally rostered in the 12s where he's available in over half of them.
Sure. I mean, if he, to his point, to Bubba's point, like he's helping, he's not hurting you anywhere else either. He's not a one-trick pony in the situation. He might not, like, and that's where we talk about with stolen bases and the rabbits. It's like, yeah, if you can guarantee me that you're going to give me 60, 65 stolen bases on the year, I can, I can hold my nose at basically hurting me in the other categories. But in saves are the same thing. If I know you're going to give me 35, 40 saves,
if you're Brandon Finnegan,
if you're the Brandon Finnegan of the world,
Finnegan, excuse me,
you can look the other way. But
right.
if you're going to help me across the board, you're not going to hurt me anywhere else. Never mind help me. Like a Strawman, you're going to get the 25 to 25 to 30 saves, but with added strikeouts, with ratios that are going to help stabilize throughout the course of the season. By all means, let's do it. All right. Well, yeah. I mean, I think we're really at a point in the season, this quote midway point, where we're not going to really see any kind of openings happen in the end of most bullpens until the end of the month, when we see a flurry of trades and we start seeing players get moved and open up new opportunities, or get traded into situations that they didn't have a set closer, and now all of a sudden you have one. So that'll be something to keep an eye out, and I'm sure it'll be something we bring up in this category for the next few weeks, because you can pick up these players in advance if you can pick up these players if you think they're going to be, you can stash these players if you think they're going to be moved into a more opportune situation. All right. Well, Kevin, let's close this out here with the, it's still my favorite category, no matter what time of year it is. Your wild card section, random guys that you can call up with that kind of stash mentality. Who you got for me?
Yeah. I think last week I brought up that there might be one more big name, but then he was banged up. That was Bryce Eldridge in San Francisco. But I think Sam Basallo, at only 20 years old, may be forcing the issue in Baltimore. He has performed so well this season. I would typically say we won't see him until the end of August, so he maintains rookie eligibility, and that may still very well be the case. However, he is making his case, which is all he can do. So it's worth keeping an eye on. I think we may see Basallo in Baltimore a little earlier than I had expected previously, even at only 20 years old.
I lost my mic and I'm trying to fix it. I think I got it.
I noticed. Yeah.
All right, good.
Go.
No one else noticed.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see kind of how that situation plays out, especially with, the situation behind the plate that we're seeing now at the major league level. So, man, Dylan
Yeah,
Beavers,
it
Uncle Ted.
wasn't very long ago that, as crazy as this sounds, we could have seen Basallo getting some at bats from Rutschman, right? As
Right.
crazy as that would have sounded, you know, not very long ago, that was a very slight possibility. Rutschman has been performing better recently, and that probably wasn't going to happen anyway. But his bat is so good, especially for a 20-year-old catcher.
Mm.
Baltimore might have to figure a way to get him in this lineup.
Yeah. Shout out to Uncle Ted calling out Dylan Beavers. Dylan Beavers,
Yes,
another
it's good news.
outfielder
Well,
tearing the ball in AAA. But we've also seen this. We've also read this story in Baltimore with outfielders who are, tearing the cover off the ball, for their AAA team, and then not knowing where to play them once they get into Baltimore. And so I do worry about that overall situation for Dylan Beavers, and maybe we don't see him until a little bit later. And if he keeps performing, it might actually keep him down even longer, hoping he can keep that rookie eligibility going into next year. So, but Dylan Beavers is definitely somebody I'm keeping an eye out for. Unfortunately, I just traded him away in my dynasty league, so I will not be utilizing him in that league anytime soon. So, cool. Well, this was great. We have the holiday weekend ahead of us. As by the time you're listening to this, you probably are in the middle of celebrating. Keep going, and more. Celebrate for me as well. And Kevin, leave us with any kind of added pieces of information that we can take into this final FAAB period before the All-Star break.
I've seen a similar sentiment brought up in multiple discords. I've seen it in the Pitcher List Discord, Bubba and the Bloom, Rob DiPietro's great Discord, all kinds of them. I've seen quite a few people mention they're having a hard time, right? We are just past the halfway point, and it's the grind, and they're losing interest. It is what I've had people have actually said.
Mm-hmm.
Losing interest in my teams. Don't, because everybody else is too. So you don't. This is where we make big moves, especially holiday weekends. We've talked about that this is our 5th season talking about that. Yes, we can get some bargains this weekend. Put in your bids, drop the amount a little bit. Of course, you know what leagues are very active and what players will still be bidding. That you have a pretty good idea. So, but just keep at it. We'll get through it, and things are going to get exciting because we've talked about this in the past, but I don't think we've talked about this season. There are times when you are gaining ground and it doesn't show up, right? You're gaining ground. You were 20 behind to the next guy in RBI, but now you're 6. You're still in the same spot, but you're getting close. You're about to pass 3 guys. Don't be discouraged. Stick at it. We are gaining ground, even if the overall standings don't show it yet.
I think that last part is extremely important to really to realize as you're going through it. Even if the standings aren't changing, you could very well be gaining ground. And we're still in July, right? It's like there's still 3 more months to go to make it from that 20 to the 6 difference. And then all of a sudden you've leapfrogged them. So the grind is real. Just keep at it. All right. We'll have all that and everything else. That's going to end it for episode 221 prior to the 15th overall FAAB period of the 2025 season. I am Adam Howe on behalf of Kevin Hasting. Thanks for listening, and we bid you goodbye.